everyone. We are back with Chapter 2, Lesson 6, and we're working on Example 3. Example 3 is talking about writing decimals as fractions. So what we're going to do is we're going to write each of these decimals as fractions. So the biggest thing when we're doing this is we need to make sure that we write each decimal as a fraction in simplest form. Simplest form means lowest terms. That's what it used to be called when I was in school. They use a lot of simplest form. That means there's no common factors between the numbers on top and bottom. So let me give you an example of that. Let's look at the number, the fraction 2/4. So 2/4 have a factor of, let's see, I'm going to write both of these numbers in a different way. 2 is the same thing as 1 times 2. Do you agree? Okay, good. And 4 is the same thing as 2 times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. What happens is these numbers have a common factor of 2. So whenever you're multiplying numbers together, they're called factors. So 2 has a factor of 2, and 4 has a factor of 2. And that is common. They have that in common. So this right here, 2/4, is not in simplest form. Simplest form, or lowest terms, means that you cancel out all of the common factors. So in order to do that, it's really, really easy, because if you look at 2 divided by 2, and you think about it, 2 divided by 2, what is 2 divided by 2? It's 1. That's right. So that becomes 1. 1 times 1/2 is 1/2. And so that is 2/4 in simplest form, is 1/2. And so we canceled out all of the common factors in there. And so that's what we're going to do with these next two examples. So let's look at the first one. We're going to put them in simplest form. Okay, so we have 18. This is the tenths, hundredths, thousands. So we have 18 thousandths. So I'm just going to write that as a fraction. 18 thousandths. Now this would be a fraction equivalent of this decimal. However, it is not in lowest terms. So we need to go ahead and put this in lowest terms. So what I can see is I can see that both of these numbers are even, and so I know that 2 goes into both of these numbers. So I know that if I was to write this, 2 times 9 is the same thing as 18, and 2 times 500 is the same thing as 1,000. So they both have a common factor of 2. So what that means is we can cancel that. 2 divided by 2 becomes 1, and we end up with 9 over 500. Now we want to see, is there any other factors or numbers that go into both of these? Well, 9 goes into 9, and 3 goes into 9. So we want to say, hey, does 3 go into 500? And there's really an easy way to figure out if a number is divisible by 3 without doing the long division. What you do is you add up all of the digits. So there's a 5, a 0, a 0. So you go 5 plus 0 plus 0. What's 5 plus 0 is 5, plus another 0 is 5. So if you go 5 plus 0 plus 0, that equals 5. And is 5 divisible by 3? No, it is not. So that means that 500 is not divisible by 3. So this is actually in simplest form right there. Now, when I'm doing this problem, I don't necessarily write it out like this. You can. If I have 18 over 1,000, what I do is I say, hey, 2 goes into 18 how many times? And I cancel it out and I say, oh, it goes in 9 times. And then 2 goes into 1,000 500 times. And then I write equal 909 over 500. So that's how I write it. So you can choose to do whichever way you would like. Okay, on to the next one. Let's do 1.55. So this is the same thing as 1. And this is the tenths place, hundredths place. So 55 hundredths. Okay. Now we're just going to look at 55 and 100, and is that in simplest form? Is there a number that can go into both of those? And to me, it looks like there is a number that can go into both. 5 can go into both because this ends with a 0 or a 5, and this ends with a 5. So whenever a number ends with either a 0 or a 5, you automatically know it's divisible by 5. So I know that 5 times 11 is 55, and I know that 5 times 20 is 100. So what's going to happen with these 5s? That's the common factor. That's going to be 1, and 1 times that is going to give you 1 and 11 20ths. And then you say, hey, are there any other common factors within there? And 11 is a prime number, and 11 plus 11 would be 22. So no, this is in simplest form. So if I was doing this problem, I would probably do it like this. I would say, hey, what number goes into both of those? 5 goes in. 5 goes into 55 11 times. 5 goes into 100 20 times. My answer is 1 and 11 20ths, like that. So you can do it either way, okay? But as you progress, this would be the way that you'd want to do it when you get into deal with fractions in a higher level. Okay, now it is your turn to check it out. Example 3. I want you to write each one of these decimals as a fraction in simplest form. So go ahead. It's time to pause, work out your problem, and then when you get done, press play, and I will see you in a bit. Okay, see you in a bit. Bye-bye. Well, not bye-bye. I'll just see you in a bit. All right, so here we go. We're doing this problem right here. We're going to change it to a fraction in simplest terms. So let's figure out what place this is. This is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we would put this over 1,000, and it's 15 thousandths. So we want to say, hey, is there a number that goes into both 15 and 1,000? And I know that because this ends in a 0 and this ends in a 5, that they're both divisible by 5. I know that 5 times 3 is 15, and I know that 5 times, I'm not sure. I have to do I don't know how many times 5 goes in there. Let's see, 5 goes into 10 2 times. That's 0, then I drop it like it's hot. 5 goes in there, no times, and then I have to, that's 0, subtract 0, then I drop this down into 0, and so there we go. It goes in 200 times. So 5 times 200 equals 1,000. And then 5 divided by 5, that's equal to 1, and so I end up with 3 200ths. And so I want to say, hey, I know that 1 and 3 go into 3. Does 3 go into 200? And remember, the easy way to do that, to figure out if a number is divisible by 3, is you go 2 plus 0 plus 0. You add up all the digits. 2 plus 0 plus 0. What is 2 plus 0 plus 0? Well, 2 plus 0 is 2 plus 0 is 2. And is 2 divisible by 3? No, it is not. So that means that 200 is not divisible by 3. So this is in simplest form right here. Now, if I was doing this problem, I would go 15 hundredths, and I would say, hey, 5 goes into both of those. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 5 goes into 1,000 2 times. My answer is 3 over 200. So if you did that either way, that is okay. All right, let's move on to B. 1.30. So we're going to write this as 1, and this is 3. This is the tenths place. Now this 0 is here, but it's really not needed. You don't need that 0 there. It doesn't need to be there. If there was a number after it, like if it was 1.302, then that 0 would be needed. But if anything you have, 1.460, and 0 is the last thing in a decimal, you don't need that 0. It's just 1.46, okay? So even though this is 1.30, that 0 is the last number in the decimal, so it's unneeded. So it's really just 1.3. And 1.3, that would be the tenths place. And so we would have 3/10. And does 3 go into 10? It doesn't. So this would be in simplest form. Now I'm going to go ahead and do it as if you didn't know that. So so this would be the answer right here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so let's go back. Rewind. 1.30. Let's say you didn't know that about the 0. And so what you did is you said, hey, that's 1. This is tenths. That's the hundredths place. So it's going to be, the 0's in the hundredths. So it's going to be 30 100ths. Okay? And then what we need to do is we just need to put this in simplest form. Now, since I know that both of these end in a 0, I know that they're both divisible by 10. So what I'm going to say is I know 30 is the same thing as 3 times 10. And I know that 100 is the same thing as 10 times 10. And there you go. There's our common factor right there. 10 divided by 10, which is the same thing as 1. And 1 times 3/10 is just 3/10. So the answer is 1 3/10. But I would be totally okay if you had 1.30, you change that into 1 30 100ths, and then you said, hey, I know 10 goes into both of those. 10 goes into 30 3 times, 10 goes into 10. 10 times, the answer is 1 3/10. So if you did it, either this is one way, this is a second way, this is a third way. If you did it one of those, or if you did both, I mean, hey, or all three, awesome job. I'm super proud of you. So great job. We will see you next time.